Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Monday, March the 8th, in the year of our Lord, 2021. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Look, we've got a lot of news today, but there's only one story. And we know that Meghan and Harry are the big story. And I'll talk about that later this hour. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I were out to dinner last night, outdoor, socially distanced, masked up, and under a heater. And I said to her, I'm glad we're not watching it while I'm recording it. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt fessed up. She was recording Meghan and Oprah, and I rolled my eyes and I said, what in the world could you possibly learn from that? And she said, well, I'm just interested. You know, Diana was interested. I said, Diana's been dead a long time. I know, but I'm still kind of interested, you know. And besides, Oprah's so good at what she does. And I said, come on, really? What are you watching it for? And then the waitress came by, young lady, 25 or so. I said, hey, tell me, if you don't mind, are you going to watch Meghan? He said, is it? I don't know. When is it? When is it? I said, it's tonight. He said, oh, I'm definitely watching that with my mom. My mom can't get enough of that stuff. So I think this is a gendered thing. I know Generalissimo was marking the calendar days off and couldn't wait to see Meghan and Oprah. And he's got audio of it, which I'll play for you. But let me do the real news first in the rundown. Number one, the stimulus bill passed the Senate, $1.9 trillion. They nipped and tucked it a little bit. There's one good part to it, and there's a lot of terrible parts to it. The good part to it is I like the child tax credit. I like that. I like $300 per child in America monthly under the age of 17 is going to start, and we'll try it for a year, and we see how it goes. And I'm going to talk about this later in the show. Parents, to the extent you can, start saving that in a tax-free growth. They're called 527s, I think. I don't know. I give money to my daughter to put them in for my grandkid. But I think you ought to, as much as you can, not spend that money. Just save it. Count it as found money. For as long as it goes, you'll be setting them up in life. And you'll say, no, some of you won't be able to do that. Some of you are going to need the money. But it's the first pro-child tax policy of which I sort of approve. I might have done it differently and made it more income specific because it showers out on people up to $150,000 a year. But that's a big change, and the rest of it's just pork, right? The U.S. is proposing an interim power-sharing government with the Taliban in Afghanistan. That'll work not. President Biden is going to hold a summit with the Quad. Now, remember, it was Mike Pompeo that started the Quad with Donald Trump. Japan, India, Australia, and the United States. We made that a thing over the last 4 years. But President Biden is out there saying he's going to hold a virtual meeting next week, calling it a quadrilateral security dialogue. His first summit. Now, it might be his first summit, but it's not the first summit with the Quad. We've been doing that for a while, but I'm glad he's focused on it. That is to contain China. Pope Francis is having an amazing visit in Iraq. Not much audio for us there. We've got the Russians attempting to persuade Americans that the COVID vaccines aren't safe. They don't want our economy back, and they aren't going to get, they're using the Russian, quote, vaccine, air quotes, and the China, quote, vaccine, air quotes. They want to undermine Pfizer's vaccine. Don't let them believe it. It's great. I've had half of it. It's working. It is driving down rates across the world where it's in use. And we are grateful for the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. By the way, there are minor differences between them. Take the first one you can get. Whatever is the first one you can get, take it. Meanwhile, from abroad, from the defense minister of Iran, we will raise Tel Aviv and Haifa if Israel attacks us. Now, we're used to that, but always good to have genocide in the morning. Meanwhile, Israeli F-15 jets and two B-52 bombers flew through Israeli airspace on Sunday, demonstrating to the mullahs in Tehran that if they pull the trigger, or if the trigger gets pulled by Hezbollah or by anybody, or if they get too close to a nuke, plenty of capability to level everything that needs to be leveled. They're getting close to elections, 2 weeks away in Israel. There was a great story in the Times of Israel, which I posted last night. Tippecanoe and Lapid too. U.S. pollsters import American-style campaigns to Israel. Apparently, if you're a pollster, you can make coin in Israel's endless elections. In Burma, as I call Myanmar, because I can never remember Myanmar, there is a amazing Roman Catholic nun who has an iconic picture now of Sister Anne Rosa Nu Tuong. And she is kneeling in front of the security forces, begging them to stop shooting people. Great picture. I posted that. Great story from the Financial Times this morning on the collapse in Brazil. Last year, one child was killed in Rio on average every month by a stray bullet. One child a month. And, quote, Brazil is reeling from overlapping crises. The economy has barely grown for almost a decade, held back by the collapse of the commodities boom. With one of the most virulent variants of the virus spreading rapidly in Brazil, many countries have closed off travel to the Latin American giant. The sense of malaise in Brazil is nowhere more keenly felt than in Rio, where the 6.7 million people who live there are just desperate. The state has an epidemic of violence and an inability to prevent children from being caught up in the crossfire. According to a new study, almost 60% of Rio's territory is now controlled by so-called militia. So it's descended into, it's getting close to a failed state there. Speaking of failed states, a failed almost state. I spent a lot of time yesterday researching what's going on in the homeland. For me, that's Scotland. The Hewitts are from the lowlands of Scotland by way of Ulster Plantation. So we are the palest people in the world. I watch Shetlands on Amazon Prime and I feel like I'm home. I think we must have come from the Shetlands because that's pretty much, I want to live there. There are only 20,000 people and there are islands with 70 people on it. I think that's the perfect place to originate the Hugh Hewitt show from. But for a long time, the Scots have been agitating to be let out of the United Kingdom, and they had a referendum that lost a few years ago. And they've had a Scottish Nationalist Party, which are just left-wingers in the disguise of something else. And it was run for a long time by Alex Salmond, who gave way to Nicola Sturgeon, who then promptly put the knife in his back and started to jab repeatedly. And it's the consequence of this is that people are losing faith in the ability of Scotland to govern Scotland, because the two biggest Scottish nationalists are fighting like clans going to war over cattle. And it's really quite wonderful. A divisive scandal grips Scotland before key election. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's public falling out with her predecessor risks escalating at a critical time. The Telegraph has a column by Madeline Grant. The left's hypocrisy and fawning over Sturgeon has finally been exposed. There's no longer any excuse for allowing the SNP to pull the woolen plaid over our eyes. And then the Salmon and Sturgeon battle, an A to Z guide to the explosive scandal at the top of Scottish politics. So it's a meltdown in Scotland. So if you watch the Shetlands, you realize we can't understand anything they say anyway in most of Scotland. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I have a favorite place in the world called the Three Chimneys. The Three Chimneys is a restaurant and bed and breakfast on the Isle of Skye after all the sheep. So it's way out there. I mean, it's way at the end of the world out there. And I would encourage you to go there. I would also encourage you, please, to head over to HughHewitt.com and be generous to Food for the Poor. There is now, on top of the COVID, it just began, a massive flooding. Mudslides destroying farmlands in a country already ravaged. Here's one TV report.
This yellow boat is from the Food for the Poor fishing villages. They were sent to help rescue people from their rooftops. The president and CEO, Ed Rain, says they will continue to provide for those in need and need your help.
So we've sent containers out already that have everything you might need to respond in these type of situations. And we're going to continue to send things out.
A special donation page has been created for anyone who wants to help.
Look, you can go over to HughHewitt.com right now or call 855-359-HOPE. We really need your help during our March campaign for Food for the Poor. Please go to the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Click on Food for the Poor. Be as generous as you can be. $111 feeds 3 hungry children for 6 months. Dig deep.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of studies, one of them was led by the black Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who made the argument that unskilled illegal aliens pose competition to unskilled black and brown workers. And Coretta Scott King once wrote a letter, I believe it was you who brought my attention to that. I wrote a letter to Congress urging them not to relax sanctions against employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens because of the threat that they pose to black and brown workers. That was Coretta Scott King writing that letter.
And there were a number of others, Barbara Jordan and others, of course, but this was at a time when many of our black leaders actually had true, adult, sane concerns about the prospects of African Americans. These days, I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone, but if you take a look at our so-called black leaders, they're all in uniform lockstep with the principal interests of the Democratic Party as opposed to the average American and average black American. We have had hearing after hearing at the Civil Rights Commission. There have been numerous hearings before Congress on this. The evidence is plain. Yes, you're going to get contrary arguments from people. I would urge your listeners, take a look at the data. One of the pieces of evidence before the Civil Rights Commission is that 40% of the a full 18-point decline in labor rates among blacks prior to the Trump administration came from competition from illegal immigrants. That's astonishing. That was turned around under Trump. We actually had a complete reversal. We had the lowest unemployment rates among blacks in history, and especially among young blacks. And labor participation rates for young blacks was going through the roof. And now, just because Trump implemented this, we're reversing this, and we're damaging the prospects in a time when we can't afford it in the midst of a pandemic.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He's Andrew Cuomo. He's like a mafia don. He doesn't go out of anywhere unless it's in a box. Tell us, what's the truth, Joe Piscopo?
You know, Seb, he is. He's the Terminator of politics. And he really is. He'll be back. I'll be back. You know, and then I love everybody's making the mafia references because he's Italian. I don't get offended by it, but he's like the Salazzo character. Remember?
Yes, Virgil Salazzo.
I don't like violence, Michael. It's bad for business, you know? I mean, and then or how about this line? You want to see Governor Cuomo say that the bad news for me and bad news for you. You know, it's like a character. However, let me put this caveat out there, if I may, my friend. When I knew Andrew 30 years ago, 20 years ago, he was always nice. He was always cordial. He was always a gentleman. That's the Andrew Cuomo I know. I don't know who this guy is now, you know? And
really?
Michael Goodwin. Yeah, honestly. And
so you say he's changed?
I don't look. I talked to Kieran Lawler, who's up in Albany, one of the assemblymen, and Kieran said, "Joe, why are you saying nice things about Andrew Cuomo?"
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Good morning to you. Do you know she's 88 years old? Petula Clark. Now, I'm playing you a little Petula Clark because we're welcoming KGMI News Talk 790 96.5 FM and KGMI.com in Bellingham, Washington. And they don't know anything about me up there. And I'm so glad to be joining their lineup. Nobody can replace Rush. Nobody at all. It's not possible to replace Rush. But I am going to do my best to fill the void. And I need to tell our friends up north a little bit about myself. The first thing you'll know is that I've been boring people with my running life forever. Since the morning glory days of my first show. I've been on the air for 20 years, Bellingham. To my friends now at KGMI, I have good friends and live in Bellingham. If you know the Thameses, they're trying to get us to move there, but we're not moving there. We're going to go up and visit. And all of their kids are up there, and they're basically colonizing. Southern California is fleeing to northern Washington state, but not me. I'm gone to Virginia. And any event, I run most days, and on Saturday, I got my first half marathon in since turning the wonderful age of 65. Now, I'm not fast. In fact, the half marathon that I did on Saturday was just a little bit slower than the best marathon I've ever done in the 80s. So I'm basically twice as slow as I used to be pretty fast. My personal record's 3:12. And they got a great race up there, I understand. I got to come up to Bellingham and, quote, race it. But I trundle now. But after 11 miles, I was feeling poorly. And needed a little pickup. So I switched from listening to a book on tape, which is what I normally do, listening to GARP, The World According to GARP, which I've never listened to by John Irving. And I began to play from my playlist. And as Adam will tell you, I have the worst playlist in America. But I would play songs that are good to run to, one of which is, by the way, Don't Sleep in the Subway, and pick up the pace to get through the last 2 miles. So the playlist today is the playlist that got me moving, got me under 3 hours. By 52 seconds. It's 2 hours, 59 and 3 seconds or something like that. I wanted to break 3 hours for a half marathon. I'm not very fast anymore. I'm a trundler now. But welcome, Bellingham. I've been on the air on this show for 20 years. I've been on talk radio since 1990. Rush and I were on KFI together in 1990, 91, 92, 93. He used to do cross promotions with me. And, I always say he built them all. The rest of us just have stores in it. And I'm awfully glad to have this storefront in Bellingham. The short version, I grew up in Ohio. We are an Ohio-based show, even though we never go there. I broadcast sometimes from Cleveland. Son of Warren, grandson of Ashtabula, Catholic education, Catholic sheep dip. I'm an evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterian. That means I go to Mass on Saturday into the Presbyterian Church with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, to whom I've been married almost 39 years. We have 3 children. They're grown. I have grandchildren. They're little. It's great fun. The years 60 to 70 are the best years. The years 70 to 75 are the second best years. After that, it gets dodgy. Went to Harvard, left Harvard. They didn't brainwash me. Went out to San Clemente. Went to work for Richard Nixon as a ghostwriter. Then I went to Michigan Law School. They didn't brainwash me. Then I went to D.C. and worked for the Ronaldo Magnus, as Rush said. I was in the White House counsel's office at Justice and other places. Then came to California, built the Nixon Library. I'm back now doing a hitch as the president of the foundation in California, and began my media career immediately on KFI Radio, KCET Television, and 20 years ago began this show with Generalissimo, who's in the background, who runs the after show every day. You can subscribe to The Universe and hear Dwayne every evening at 5 in the West, 8 in the East. Adam, who began a week after we began the show, and Harley and Ben are in the hot seats now. I've got 12 books. You see me on Meet the Press. I write for the Washington Post. All I do is opine. But I promise you one thing. When breaking news happens, you'll hear about it. The people who make the news are here. We make the news here. So don't go anywhere other than right here, KGMI, friends. You're listening to The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Changed?
I don't look. I talked to Kieran Lawler, who's up in Albany, one of the assemblymen, and Kieran said, "Joe, why are you saying nice things about Andrew Cuomo?" I said, "I'm just saying when I met him, he was nice." Then I talked to Michael Goodwin this morning, that we know and love from the New York Post, and Michael says he has changed in office. I do know this about him. First of all, he was always nice to me, and I always open the mic up to join me on the air. But I'm not Seb Gorka. I like to think I'm a good radio guy, but I'm not. He said to me, he goes, "Joe, I love you, but you know Dr. Gorka." He told me that. No, not really, but the thing is, what he did was with the women was one thing, and he apologized, and we have to accept that. I think easy for me to say, but it was nice that he did that. Not what you know what this means. The Italians go like this. You and the Italians go like this. They not one question from any reporter about the nursing home death.
Right.
Did you notice that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Andrew Cuomo was rewarded every single step of the way by mass media, by Hollywood, for his handling of the Chinese coronavirus. And here's a question that we brought up earlier. I don't know if we actually ordered his book or not. How did he get away with writing a book in the midst of a scandal? In the midst of a crisis? Could you imagine if Donald Trump published a book in the midst of the Chinese coronavirus? Andrew Cuomo, Cut 51, says, "Who cares people died in nursing homes or hospitals?" The Hillary Clinton way of looking at it. What difference does it make? Play tape.
But we're below the national average in number of deaths in nursing homes. But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died.
So why does that matter? That's actually a really important point. Since we do not have in any form of an honest press in our country, a follow-up question would say, well, Mr. Cuomo, let me tell you why that matters. Because in densely populated nursing homes of people over the age of 80 with comorbidities, if you were putting infected patients into those environments, it matters a lot. Whereas in hospitals, they're far more equipped to handle people that are currently fighting upper respiratory illnesses or diseases than a nursing home. Wouldn't you agree with that, Mr. Cuomo?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I have a list of 32 questions that you should ask any relative or friend and send the list to any relative or friend to find out if that relative or friend is a is a liberal or a leftist. It's powerful stuff. I'm going to read to you the questions. I actually read it last night. I read it when it's published, because when you see your work published, it looks different, as it were. And here, I'm going to call it up from, well, I would if my computer worked. It renders that difficult. That's too bad. All right, I'll get it up somehow. There.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. This is actually a good pace to run by. It's Joan Baez in one of her later works. And yes, we are indiscriminate in our musical taste here at the Hugh Hewitt Show. To our new audience at KGMI in Bellingham, I'm stuck in the 70s with a little bit of 60s and a little bit of 80s. I'm just stuck in the 70s. That's most of the bumps, unless Adam gets control of it. And then you hear techno stuff, and then I take it back. Time to do a business story. Every morning I'll give you a business story, brought to you by Birch Gold. And I don't do market updates because it's way too early in the market day to make any sense. But I do a business story of the day, and Birch Gold pays for that. They're a sponsor of the show. As Rush would say, an obscene profit break. No, I just bring you a business story. And Birch Gold has passed 10,000 customers now who go to hughgold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 474747 in order to buy gold or to invest a portion of their IRA or 401k in a precious metals, physical precious metals-backed IRA or 401k. I buy my gold from Birch Gold. I preach diversity. I'm not a professional investor, nor did I stay at Holiday Inn. I don't give financial advice, and I don't do market reports. I give you a business story of the day, and I remind you every day, you ought to have a portion of your life savings in precious metals and a portion, if you can afford it, in real estate. Then you get diversified into stocks and bonds, and you don't want to go overboard into anything. And I hate Robinhood, and I don't like chasing dreams, and you can't get rich quick, and don't go to Las Vegas. That's the sum total of my financial advice. It's boring and it works. Dollar cost averaging and everything works. And I'll explain that some other time. When those $300 checks a month start coming in, even if you are pressed to the wall financially, the United States Congress has passed a $300 a month check for people under, I believe it's $150,000 household income or $80,000 individual income. You'll get $300 per child. And so when that starts to arrive, try and save as much of that as possible and try and do so in a diversified portfolio. Start with a mutual fund that's based on the S&P 500. It's your first investment. Your second investment should be in a different mutual fund. Your third investment might be in gold. You can't afford to buy an ounce of gold. An ounce of gold this morning is at $1,689. When you can afford gold, go to birchgold.com or text Hugh to 474747 and then repeat the cycle. Diversifying. And if there's a 529 in your state, that's the best place to put it because that money grows tax-free. So try and do that. Number one story, business story of the day, comes from CNBC. Investors haven't fully grasped inflation is dead ahead, economist Mark Zandi warns. Moody's Analytics Mark Zandi believes Wall Street is significantly underestimating the seriousness of an inflation comeback. He is so right. We've never printed $2 trillion before, and we're doing it now. Sure enough, oil jumped above $70 yesterday briefly. It's back down around 66 this morning. But on Sunday, it went above 70 after an attack by the Houthis on Saudi oil facilities because, of course, Joe Biden doesn't like the Saudis, but it's the Houthis who are trying to destroy everything. And so inflation is coming. Not only is the world printing money to deal with COVID, the commodities have gone crazy. The only thing I will tell you, I'll never give you an update on the American stock market because it's out of date by the time I give it to you. But I will tell you that abroad, Germany and England both had up days. That always kind of previews the American market in the morning. And so if they've gone through the whole German day and they're up 1.23%, that's good news. Sometimes it doesn't carry over, but it usually does. Okay, time to turn to Harry and Meghan. Oh gosh, I can't even believe I'm doing this. Harry and Meghan, the king and queen of woke. Let's play the thing that's making the most news, and it's sad. Let's play cut number 3. So the institution isn't a person. No, it's a person, but it's several people. It doesn't make a lot of sense what happened last night, from what I've been able to tell. She had suicidal thoughts, which is very bad. And if you ever have them, go tell someone about them. She did the right thing. She told Harry about them. But a lot of this was blaming publicly the firm, which is QE2, for her troubles. And everybody talking about how trapped they fell. Here's Harry, Meghan, and Oprah talking about being trapped. I mean, it's tough to actually imagine this, but cut number 1.
Okay.
He is a fantastic person. I'll never forget the video of him when rockets start to hit and dashing away from an interview and jumping into his helicopter. He's the real deal. I got no problem with Harry and Meghan. God bless them and may they live a long and happy life. Nor am I ever going to spend a minute watching. I don't understand anyone who watched this. You invested 2 hours of your life in what is essentially a preview for season 9 of The Crown. And Dwayne watched it all, and he had it on his calendar, and he was counting down the days, and he's a big Meghan fan. And I just do not understand. I'm going to ask Selena after the break if she watched it. I have a theory, 1-800-520-1234. She also decided all about branding this was all about brand last night. Cut number 2. How awful. Now, I am sympathetic to someone who feels overwhelmed by what we've all seen on the Queen. But, QE2 has sailed through this water for a long time, and Prince Philip is 99. They went through a war. I am just telling you that I may not be the target audience here. Dwayne was the target audience. And I'm going to ask Selena Zito. Selena Zito is going to be my test case. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I know it's season 25 of The Crown, but that's many years down the road. Let me switch over to ReliefFactor.com, and especially KGMI. Look, here's the deal. You're going to hear about ReliefFactor.com 3 times a day. I take it in the first hour. See, if you're watching on, and you can watch, by the way, you can watch this show on YouTube. We broadcast it live from the Hugh Hewitt Vast Studio Complex. And we put it on Facebook, and we put part of it up at my podcast. But there is Icarian Curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, 4 pills, which I take every day. And the reason I do so is because I'm active and I'm getting older. And if you are either of those, and you're definitely getting older, you need to have support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. The only supplement I take vitamins and ReliefFactor.com, because those 4 supplements work to help your body work with you to stay as fit and as active as possible. So I did my first half marathon since turning 65. I don't know. I did my last marathon at 50 and hurt myself pretty badly stepping in a hole. And I've been getting back to good distance and have done a few half marathons. But the first one since 65 was Saturday, and I need my ReliefFactor.com. Didn't run yesterday, recovery day, but ReliefFactor.com makes it possible. Get it. $19.95 gets you started. I'll remind you about it later in the show. And Selena Zito, the Yinzer Report, next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Hard in phrasing it in such a way as to make it completely clear so that the reader does not have to ask, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? And then we can work on it. And well, you know what the magic is, my friends, when you can't do something on your computer what you do is turn it off, reboot it. Your Windows, if it's Windows, your Windows system wants to be renewed. It is a spiritual act on the part of your computer.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden announcing yesterday, here's what he said about enough vaccines for every adult in America in a matter of weeks.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
Now, while that's good news, he can't help himself in taking pot shots at the previous administration that has delivered the vaccines to the world. They laughed. They mocked Trump when he set a target date of having a vaccine at the end of 2020. Well, guess what? We got the vaccine by the end of 2020. You know why? Because of President Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Remember Kamala Harris, who said she might not even take the vaccine that was recommended by the Trump administration? Well, now they've done a 180-degree pivot. Now, as the Wall Street Journal editorial board points out, the Biden-Harris administration has changed to full-throated encouragement.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, and good morning, especially in Bellingham, Washington. I got to introduce you to Selena Zito, who joins me most Mondays at this time. Bellingham, Washington, our new affiliate in Northwest Washington State, 790 on the dial, or 96.5 FM, KGMI.com in Bellingham. Selena Zito is a longtime Pittsburghian, a Yinzer. And she writes a great column for the Washington Examiner and for the New York Post. And we allow her in because we are open-armed here. We even let Pittsburghers in. And she's been to Shenango. And Shenango for me has been, Newcastle and Shenango have been for me terms that showed up on WKBN Channel 27 in Youngstown as places where sports occurred, but nothing else. It was over the line and not far from where I grew up. And good morning, Selena. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for giving everyone such a great geography lesson.
Well, you live in Pittsburgh. I grew up in Youngstown, Warren, and in between there is Newcastle. And everybody knows about Newcastle. I did not know about Chris Fry, the youngest Republican African-American mayor in the city's history, because he's the only African-American mayor in the city's history. He's also the oldest African-American mayor in Newcastle's history.
Yeah, he's really an interesting young man. This is a predominantly white, predominantly Democrat town, and he's young, and he's black, and he's Republican, and he's very conservative, and he won that race in a landslide in November of 2019. It was sworn in January 2020, and 1 month later, there was a pandemic.
So tell me about Newcastle, where I don't think it's not near the freeway between Pittsburgh and the north. I don't know how you get to Newcastle. Did it get cut off because of the freeway? Is it near the freeway?
Well, if you take 422 straight across the state, it's right across the state line from Youngstown.
Oh, it's on historic 422. That's why I take 11. We're talking geography here. I take 11 when I go down to pick up the Pittsburgh run. So that's why I haven't been there. What's the town like?
The town is very much like Youngstown. It was the sister city to Youngstown. It had the Carnegie Seal. It had the Shenango pottery, which ended up becoming Shenango, China. It was a big steel town along the Shenango River. It produced as much steel as Youngstown did.
You see, and Youngstown has the Mahoning, and Warren has the Mahoning River. You had to have a river to do a steel town.
Shenango.
So it fell
Shenango
onto Shenango River in Newcastle. It fell onto hard times. Is it recovering, and does oil and gas have anything to do with it?
It is recovering. Oil and gas are part of the recovery. It's a great little town, lots of little city, shouldn't call it a town, and very similar to places where we grew up where, there's this great wave of immigrants that come over in the beginning of the 20th century, and along with them comes all their different foods. So there's all kinds of different restaurants there. You could just spend like 3 weeks there going to a different restaurant every day. The food is amazing.
I have linked the column for everyone over at Hugh Hewitt on Twitter. Now I got to ask you while I've got you, did you watch Meghan and Harry with Oprah last night?
Oh, yeah, with popcorn.
You disappoint me, Selena. The fetching Mrs. Hewitt admitted under intense questioning that she was recording it and was going to watch it after I was asleep, and she was staying up late to watch. I couldn't believe it. Why did you watch it? What could you possibly learn from it?
It's nothing. You can't learn anything, but it's like watching a soap opera. It's like watching Days of Our Lives, and you can't turn away.
Why can't you turn? You're like Dwayne. Dwayne is the only person in our studio who watched every minute of it, and he took notes, and he's been telling me about it in my ear. But what thrill is there in watching royal stuff?
It's not a thrill. It's sort of like a sociological, experiment in which you watch these people who believe that they are so incredibly superior to you. And that they're not, and they're going to mess it up, and they do, and you get to watch them do it in their own hands.
But wait, is it hate watching? I've got hate reading. I've got readers who read my Washington Post column, and I have a new one yesterday, who read it just to post nasty comment. Is it so you can feel even less sympathetic to Meghan and Harry? Is that why you watch it?
I wouldn't call it hate, but it might be for some people. I'm just sort of fascinated by people who have this sort of superior attitude to other people. The
little bit I played was cringe-inducing. Were you cringing through it?
Oh, yes. It was also part of the allure. It's like watching a train wreck, and you're like.
They are the king and queen of woke. Do you agree with that they are the king and queen of woke?
Yes.
That's what they are. They're the royalty of woke. And Selena Zito is the royalty of normal people. Read everything by her at selenazito.com. Come right back for hour 2 of the Monday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
We are so divided in this country that those of us who can reach across the aisle and agree on certain things really, really need to do it right now. And it really blessed me to hear you talk about our civil liberties and some of the things that to me seem like common sense, but there aren't a lot of people on the political left, or I'm not sure where you are exactly, maybe these categories don't even work anymore, who are talking about it.
While I am on the left, if you're unfamiliar with me, everybody, I wrote a book in 2008 about the risk to America of losing all of our freedoms and the descent into fascism. And the reason I've been very kind of outspoken and trying to sound a warning now in a very transpartisan way, as you kindly mentioned, Eric, is that we're at step 10. I kind of spelled out in that book that there are 10 steps to fascism that tyrants on the left or on the right always take. And over the years, people have said, well, when are we at step 10? And we haven't been, but now we are. And so now is not the time to let ourselves be divided by all the things that we can debate about, forever, and that should be debated and should be argued over. And, there should be battles in the right forums like Congress around the things we disagree on, but we have to unite as a nation to save our Constitution, save our First Amendment freedoms, which are being crushed by this, medical pandemic, which is real, but has been exploited by very cynical people. There's a kind of systematic assault on our liberties going on right now, using the pandemic as a pretext.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Well, my question is, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about systemic racism, and I mentioned one of your nuggets that actually more white people, unarmed white people, are killed than black people. And you say, of course they are, because there's more white people in this country than black people. So what's the answer to that? I didn't know how to come back on that.
Real simple. White people are what percentage of the population? Around 61%. What percentage of the homicides are committed by white people? 50%, meaning they commit, as a percentage of their population, less murders than blacks do at 13%. We commit almost half of the homicides at 13%. So at 13%, we're far, far more likely to be an offender and a victim of a homicide. A young black man is anywhere from 7 to 10 times more likely, Larry, to be the victim of a homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black man. The leading cause of death for young white men, Larry, is accidents, like car accidents or pool drownings. The leading cause of death, preventable or non-preventable for young black men, homicide, almost always at the hands of another black man. That is why the police are there. It is true that the police are 2.5 times more likely to kill a black suspect. It's also true, as I said, that a young black suspect is 7 or 8 times more likely to be a victim of a homicide. That's why the cops are there. You look at a city, Larry, like St. Louis. St. Louis is about 45% black. About 300 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Baltimore, 65% black. About 400 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Chicago, a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides black on black. Tell your friend that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We find out
2 weeks ago from his assistant on that call to Democrat lawmakers. Oh, yeah, we hid the evidence from the feds. Joe, if you hid the evidence from the feds of a crime, if I did, guess what? The feds are on our door at 6 a.m. with AR-15s. Is this man made of Teflon? Is he the new Teflon Don?
No, I got to tell you, honestly, and it's so tough for me now. So I talk to you as a Salem brother. I try to stick up for the Italians, and I'm getting killed there. We got Fauci, we got Pelosi, we got De Blasio, we got Cuomo. I'm getting killed over here, my friend. I'm just telling you. It's like,
it's got to be tough.
It's tough now. And I want to say something nice about Dr. Fauci. Boom. They'll call up. Everybody calls. They'll tell me what's up. And with Andrew, though, he is a political animal along the lines, the old world political animal, and I mean that he's very savvy. He's Nancy Pelosi, he's Chuck Schumer. You may not like these people. They are vicious when it comes to politics. You know that. So I don't think you ever count them out. I think, I'm telling you what, even with all those nursing home deaths, and our hearts go out to every family. Janice Dean.
Yes.
Can you get more of a sweet person than Janice Dean? How great is she? And what she had to go through, that alone, I think Andrew owes an apology for that as well. I'm amazed that they didn't.
That's the point. Where's his apology to the families, to the loved ones, like Janice Dean, who lost her parents-in-law to the COVID virus because of this governor?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You see, the story of the nursing homes is actually a very complicated story. The nursing home story is one that we warned about on this program, and the great one Mark Levin warned about back in March. I remember listening to the Mark Levin radio program, and a woman called into the Great One's radio show and said, Mark, I work for a nursing home association, and Andrew Cuomo is now ordering Chinese coronavirus infected patients to be put into nursing homes. And at the time Andrew Cuomo was doing his multi-hour, slow, daily briefings. Mark Levin asked the caller, this can't possibly be true, and Janice Dean, who works for Fox News, claims that both of her parents were killed as a result of this policy. Let's also get the tape of Janice Dean. So this was a scandal that we knew was occurring. Now, putting Chinese coronavirus infected patients into nursing homes is bad enough. But Andrew Cuomo decided to do something worse than that. He doubled down on the policy, lied about it ever happening, and then covered it up. You see, early on in the virus, it's understandable that mistakes are going to be made. Some Republican governors made some mistakes. And you course correct. You say, we shouldn't have done that. And you adjust. That's what being a leader is all about.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to our new affiliate in Bellingham, Washington. No one can replace Rush Limbaugh, but we will do our best to fill the void in the Rush slot in Washington State and Bellingham on News Talk 790. Good morning. Most Mondays I'm joined at this time, Washington State, by our friend from Punchbowl News. And you've got to go to punchbowlnews.com to read Jake Sherman every morning, because Punchbowl News is sort of the insider's guide to everything in the Beltway, and I'm normally in the Beltway. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
Hi, Hugh. How are you?
Great, but you did not admit to watching Oprah and Meghan and Harry in Punchbowl News this morning, so I got to put you on the spot.
We stick to what we do. I did watch a little bit of it.
You did? Oh no!
I did.
Oh,
Jake. My wife was very into it, and what she says, what she has on TV goes. I couldn't overrule her last night.
Well, look, I agree completely. You cannot wrest the remote from the hand of the spouse. That's a good rule for 39 years of marriage, I can tell you. But You can leave the room, and you chose not to.
I mean, I don't have many thoughts on this. It seems like it was a bad situation, which they have extricated themselves from. So I guess on that score, I'm happy. But beyond that, I don't have much of a view on Harry and Meghan.
Ask the fetching Mrs. Sherman what I asked the fetching Mrs. Hewitt last night, which is, what value could you possibly get from this? And my wife said the only way out is to say something like, I wanted to watch Oprah at her craft, because Oprah is, I think, the second best interviewer in America, and she's been doing it for almost as long as I have, and she is pretty good at this. But nevertheless, it was still a train wreck. Let's go to what you wrote about this morning. I'm particularly interested in Manchin, but first let's talk about the relief bill. It was $1.9 trillion when it started out. Changes were made in the Senate. Is it still $1.9 trillion after the changes were made in the Senate?
Yes, they fit in. That's the framework they've had to fit it in, and that's where they've netted out, I believe. I haven't seen any estimates that would indicate otherwise. But listen, you got to give Biden credit. I thought it would end up closer to $1 trillion. So, and I just said this a couple of minutes ago on TV. A couple more trillion, we'll be talking about real money here. But yes, that's where they've ended up, and that's it. We expect it to pass the House tomorrow.
Yeah, and by the way, they won't make any changes in it in the House. This is no drama. They're going to vote on it tomorrow. They can't make a change, or it has to go back to the Senate, right?
Yeah, and they are just going to have to swallow it. And I'm actually skeptical. I'm surprised, not skeptical. I was skeptical, and I now am surprised that they are going to be able to get this through by March 14th, which is the deadline they set for themselves. But here we are. I mean, it's you have to give them credit, at least if you don't like the policy, which I'm not even talking about the policy, but they got it in the time that they wanted, and I was very skeptical they'd be able to.
Jake, what's very interesting, I don't know if you've compared the Republican effort to repeal Obamacare, which was their first reconciliation bullet, or their second reconciliation bullet, which was the tax change, how long it took the Republican. I think it was significantly longer. I think that the Republicans farted around for a long time, and they didn't move quickly. And I was here saying, gosh, you got to move quickly. Go, 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 go. Democrats get that speed kills. Democrats get it, and Republicans don't.
I would agree with you on that. And I don't mind taking a position on tactics. I know Republicans, with the tax cut bill, I think it was the summer that it went down finally. And on the Obamacare bill, the tax cut bill obviously passed for good. In the winter of 2017. I think it was November or December of 2017. So, yeah, listen, they got this. There's a big difference here because the component parts of this bill, of this relief bill, were known, and most people have voted on these component parts, including Republicans. Have voted on these component parts in the past. There were no surprises here. We knew the outlines of this bill. With a tax cut bill or an Obamacare bill, there was no unity on it. There was no. It's a lot more amorphous in the sense that it was. There was a lot of other places you could go. Here, you knew what the core of this bill would be: direct payments, unemployment extension, state and local money. That was the core of this bill, and they never kind of strayed from that.
Now, Jake, what I think is interesting is I have had this argument for a long time that McConnell's very gifted. House leadership under Paul Ryan was more deliberative. There were more factions. The Democrats have demonstrated that it is possible now. When the Republicans come in 2024, as I expect, with both houses, as I expect, they will have a March 15th deadline, and they won't be able to say to their constituents, it's going to take us longer, blah, blah, blah. Like they did slow walk their reconciliation, and you get 2 bullets, you get 2 reconciliations. Now, when does the next reconciliation start? Bernie wants to attack the tax code, and they're going to have to attack the tax code in the second reconciliation. When does it start, Jake?
Now. It needs to start now. I think it'll be some combination of, I'm going to lump a lot of information into this one answer, some combination of infrastructure and taxes. Manchin has said he will not support anything on reconciliation when it comes to infrastructure. That's a big deal if he sticks to it. And I will add just one more thing here, Hugh. Let's give conservative Republicans some credit here. When they didn't like something, they stood up against it. They changed the unemployment insurance provision in here from 400 to 300 weekly, which doesn't seem like a big change, but man, that is the core of what they really wanted to attack in this bill, and they curbed it. So I just think that the fact that the progressive left is not standing up for that tells you a lot about their theory on tactics and strategy.
Well, the thing that is most interesting to me is the $300 per child per month provision, which is the most pro-life, pro-family, pro-child thing to have passed the United States Congress in history, indeed in any Congress in the world. And that which gets rewarded gets repeated. It's a very big boon to children and families. I'm all in favor of it, by the way, and it's only $100 billion. But I still haven't seen a breakdown of where the $1.9 trillion goes. $100 billion goes to kids. Show me the rest and tell me what it is. We're going to have some cylinders in here. Now I want to talk to you about Manchin.
I actually disagree with you, Hugh. I don't think you are. So I just was talking with somebody else about this on TV. I actually don't think you're going to have any cylinders in this. I think where the cylinders are going to come, if they come at all, is in the next reconciliation package.
Wait till you see where that $350 million for state and local government went. Wait until you see.
Possible.
That's where it's going to be.
There's a big bailout for multi-employer pensions, which is a big deal for the left and will anger a lot of people on the right and perhaps people not on the right.
Doesn't bother me if they're not public employee pensions. And I've read one place that they're not public employee pensions.
They're not. They're not. And
are you sure?
I'm not 100% sure, but the Times has a good breakdown on this morning, and I read that. It doesn't indicate that it is. But by the way, the left has been angling, Democrats have been angling for this for a long time and have said they needed it. I think, so I'll take your point that maybe there will be some boondoggles or things that are positioned as boondoggles. But that all said, this is the next bill where you're earmarking highway funding and all that stuff. That is where you're going to get some things that people are going to be able to use in campaign ads against you if it goes awry.
So what I'd love to see in Punchbowl is an estimated calendar for the bullet number 2. Now I got to talk about Manchin. Manchin tried to set up a lie yesterday. He tested out a way out of his commitment not to break the filibuster. If he does anything to change the filibuster, I will understand it as a lie and he will be a liar because he guaranteed the voters of Georgia he would not change the filibuster. Are you going to call him out on it, Jake?
We did. We spoke about it this morning. We wrote about it this morning. I didn't call him a liar.
No, he's not. He hasn't yet. He's talking about it.
But listen, what he's saying he's going to do, and what you're alluding to, and what you're saying is he wants to change the filibuster to a talking filibuster, which would mean you have to hold the floor for your if you want to oppose a bill. Right now, you just have to tell your leadership you're opposed to it, and 99%, or not 99%, a huge percent of legislation requires a 60-vote threshold, which is the filibuster. So listen, he signaled new openness here, very big for filibuster elimination advocates, not so big for people who are interested in the rights of the minority as traditionally defined by people in the Senate. So yes, this is a change in gear, and this is a shift for him.
I have admiration for Joe Manchin, but if he does that, he's a liar because he guaranteed the people of Georgia he would not do that. And I don't know if you got the exact quote, but he was very specific on Fox and everywhere else that he was against changing the filibuster. So if he changes it a little bit, that's just a lie, and we ought to be ready to call him a liar.
He might have said he was in the quotes that you're referring to, that he was not going to eliminate it. I think he would view this as not eliminating it, but rather changing it.
That's a lie. I mean, not you, but if he does that, he will be a liar. And does Kristen Sinema indicate any hedging on her commitment not to change the filibuster?
She hasn't said. She's very, not cagey, but she holds her cards close to her vest, but she frequently pairs up with Manchin. So I haven't heard her on this, and by the way, the biggest misnomer, not the biggest lie, but the biggest misnomer is that it's only Sinema and Manchin. There are progressives. There are people in the Senate who you would not imagine. I don't have them confirmed, so I won't say their names, but there are Democrats who don't want to get rid of the filibuster. So it's not just them.
They shouldn't. The blue slip, the filibuster, the anti-majoritarian features of the Senate are not in the Constitution, but they are very valuable. And I know what Manchin said, and if he votes for any change, that will make him a liar. I hope he's not a liar. We'll find out. Jake Sherman of punchbowlnews.com. Thank you, Jake. Come right back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Where does this come from? I mean, I'm asking huge questions only because I so respect your mind. I don't even know if answers are fully available. Maybe it's built into certain people's natures. Where do you think it comes from? I have zero desire. I have a lot of bad desires. I have a sinful nature like others. But I have to admit, one of those sins is not a desire to control anybody.
Well, I slightly disagree, and I don't disagree about you, but I mean I disagree that that there are two kinds of people in the world, the potential tyrants and the lovers of freedom. Let me put it a slightly different way. If somebody were to come to me and say, hey, Dinesh, you agree that good books improve people and bad books harm people, don't you? I would say, yes, I do agree. And then if they were to say, let's imagine a society where you, Dinesh, have complete control over every book that people read. You get to decide what they read, and all the bad books, in your opinion, will be destroyed forever and burned. Would that be an attractive proposition for you? I would have to confess, immensely so. In other words, I would think that we could rid society of all kinds of evils if I was completely in charge and I established the curriculum for the whole world. Now, I realize this is all just a thought experiment here, but I guess what I'm trying to say, I think the desire, the tyrannical impulse is there in human nature.
Fascinating. This is truly an important discussion. See his video. It is up at PragerU.com.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
As the Wall Street Journal editorial board points out, the Biden-Harris administration has changed to full-throated encouragement, though not before continuing to trash the Trump efforts. The White House is saying, you just heard Biden. Oh, the previous administration didn't contract for enough vaccine. We fixed all that. That's a lie. As the Wall Street Journal points out, the supply was ramping up very quickly. The real problem was the last mile of distribution controlled by the states. Governors like Cuomo tried to satisfy political constituencies that wanted early access to vaccines, adding complexity and bureaucracy that confused the public. Biden made the same mistake, asking states to give priority to educators, read teachers' unions, school staffers, and child care workers. That's arbitrary and unfair. A 30-year-old teacher who may still work remotely until September.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. A special good morning to KGMI News Talk 790, 96.5 FM and KGMI.com in Bellingham, Washington. We now have a footprint on the northern border with Canada. We can now begin to proselytize not only Washington State, but our Canadian friends north of Bellingham. Hey, welcome. My question for the audience. I haven't even given out my phone number yet with a new affiliate that big. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. It's been that number forever, for 30 years. And it remains 1-800-520-1234. Actually, that's not correct. For 20 years. For the years that I was on KFI, it was something else, which I'm not going to give out, which I can still remember. If you say a number again and again, 1-800-520-1234, it sticks. My question, and it's really only one question, why did you watch the King and Queen of Woke last night? If you watched Harry and Meghan, why did you do so? The best, most honest answer thus far is it was a good soap opera. A preview of season 11 of The Crown. And I don't get it. I have great respect for Queen Elizabeth. I love British politics. I'm deep into a second read of Salisbury, who was the last prime minister of the 19th century. I have watched The Crown because I think Elizabeth is an amazing person, but I have very little interest in that. Now, a couple of nastygrams arriving on Twitter. Republicans defending the monarchy because racism. And just curious, did you actually listen to what they said, or did you just reflexively take the side of old white people, old rich white people? I don't think of myself as old. I wonder if Tim Fullerton did a half marathon on Saturday. But no, I take the same point of view as I do of personality-driven politics everywhere. I don't think it's very interesting. I think the $300 tax credit per child is the most radical social policy adoption. I'm in favor of it in the history of legislatures ever. It's a negative income tax for children. And it's far more important than what Harry and Meghan have to say to Oprah. Now, Oprah is a heck of a professional. I've noted many times that the only people to have successfully built and maintained audiences of 20 million people over a 20-year period are Rush and Oprah. They are the most successful communicators of the last 30 years in America. Those two people, Rush and Oprah. Different audiences, different styles, different approaches. So the fetching Mrs. Hewitt defended her watching on the basis of Oprah's skill set. Like watching Billy Shoemaker in his greatest years ride Secretariat. It's like listening to Dennis Prager talk about the male-female hour. It's like watching McEnroe play tennis, or Jack Nicklaus play golf, or me conduct an interview. By the way, HughInterview.com is where, I have the podcast up at theinterviewwithhughhewitt.com, and my consultant said, I want you to switch to the HughInterview.com. So I'm going to do both. You can find it one way or the other. But why did you watch? I want to know why you watched. 1-800-520-1234. Joanne in Sarasota, Florida. Why did you watch, Joanne?
Morning.
Good morning.
It would be a rather dry world without a little bit of a Harry and Meghan. You know what I'm saying? I love the tax credit. But if you have a heritage that touches England, and I think you do.
I do. I'm actually part Irish, so we hate the English, and I'm part Scots, so we love the English. Yeah. There's a civil war.
But this goes back a long way, and they're protecting their brand. Plus, she's not the first black royal.
I didn't know that she was. There was a mistress of one of the Williams, I think, right?
Well, actually, there was one way back when. But in any case, you understand and have some empathy because of how manipulative the royals are. And I believe she was very credible, I thought.
So you watched the whole thing?
Pretty much.
And you listen to me every morning?
Oh, yes.
So there's crossover between the Meghan and Harry audience and the Hugh Hewitt audience. That fascinates me. Joanne, thank you. More calls coming up. 1-800-520-1234 connects you, including all you folks in Bellingham, Washington on KGMI News Talk 790. That connects you to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
they still work remotely until September is at far less risk than a 50-year-old FedEx driver who interacts with customers all day. As the Wall Street Journal points out, the fairest, least political distribution standard is age. Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed also contracted most of the vaccine supply for production before approval by the FDA. 200 million doses each of Pfizer and Moderna, and 100 million of Johnson & Johnson.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
And the cancel culture has been coming from, the radical left, but it seems like big tech and everybody is just bowing to this, that they don't have any fundamental values to say, we're just not going to go there. We have different views and things. It's gotten out of hand. I feel like I'm in the French Revolution or something.
I do feel that we're in a cult. I'm going to say, I'm reluctant to say the radical left because I don't want to splinter the left, but I guess I also have to face the fact that the left is splintering. And there are people like me, I guess traditional liberals, who share values with you and your team, that above all, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of worship, these are core values and we fight for them to the death. I say that non-violently, just being super careful. And then there are these kind of neo-Marxist totalitarian enforcements of how everyone should think or how everyone should behave. These really Stalinist impositions of, right thought and right speak. And unfortunately, they are these days coming from the left, and I'm horrified. And they're especially coming, I would say, less from the grassroots left and more from the Democratic leadership. And I'm just going to say that. And by the way, I was one of 3 progressives during the Obama years who said, you know what, you don't drone American citizens. You don't make war on whistleblowers. You close Guantanamo. These are not American values. But the trouble is, when my side gets our guy or our girl in power, we do have a double standard. There is hypocrisy because it is not American to use technology to censor people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another $1 trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Peter, is there a crisis on the border?
No, there isn't a crisis. There are 5 crises. There's a humanitarian crisis, public health crisis, economic crisis, national security crisis, and a law enforcement crisis. And when I say an economic crisis, what by that I mean we're having an influx of illegal immigrants that's going to harm the job prospects of millions of people who are currently unemployed because of the pandemic in addition to other things, and they're going to be competing with those folks. As far as national security is concerned, whenever you don't enforce the border, you don't know who's coming across, and ICE has said, and Department of Homeland Security has said a number of times that they've found all manner of folk coming across the border, Iranians, Chinese, and others, and we don't have a handle on that right now. It's a law enforcement crisis because all the data shows that with respect to serious crimes, murders, rapes, robberies, illegal aliens generally have higher crime rates than do Native Americans. As far as public health is concerned, it's self-evident. We have to have proof that we are COVID-free when we enter the United States, okay, lawfully, on a plane or through the traditional entry process. But thousands of illegal immigrants are coming across. We don't even know who's coming across, but we're waving them across without any COVID tests. They could be transmitting COVID or other diseases. We don't have a handle on that. They have pretty much declared that they can come across. There's an amnesty. They'll get free health care. This entices a lot of people to make an arduous journey, be exploited by the cartels, by coyotes. This is
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I am playing for my bumps this morning. I have the worst playlist of anybody in the world. Adam will confirm that. But I have a playlist within a playlist of running song, or as I call it now, trundling. I'm no longer fast, so I'm slow, but I still trundle. And at mile 11, my interest in making 13.1 was flagging on Saturday. So I hit the playlist to pick up the pace a little bit. Didn't want to walk it in. And I'm playing that playlist this morning. Welcome back, 1-800-520-1234 on this Monday. Our new affiliate in Washington State, in Bellingham, is KGMI, 790, 96.5 FM. And I've told them a little bit about me, but they've got to. No one can replace Rush. I'll try and fill the void. Breaking news always in the morning. So if something happens that's news, I break away and I cover the news. Then it's 90% politics, and actually it's 70% politics, 20% culture, and 10% the Cleveland Indians, Browns, Cavaliers, and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, I understand if you're in Washington State, you don't have college football. I understand that. You're better off than Southern California, where you don't have colleges. But you don't have the Ohio State University, so you're welcome to listen. But if you don't know, if you're a Seahawks fan, no love here. We don't even think they play in the real conference. If you're not in the AFC North, you're not really playing football. And that will become obvious in the next 20 years. But we're glad to have you. My question this morning is simply driven by last night. I was at one of the rare dining out experiences we've had in the last year. Both the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I are halfway through the Pfizer vaccine. So we, 3 weeks after shot one, we ate outside. We're not COVID crazy. We're COVID careful. We've had a lot of friends have it, and they've had it on the spectrum, from National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said it's basically a cold to friends who have died. And so I am very leery of getting it, don't want it. I've also got asthma, even though I can run forever. I still don't want to get it. So careful. But we ate outside last night, and it was before Meghan and Harry showed up with Oprah. And I asked the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, FMH as we call her on the show, did you watch? Are you like Dwayne? Dwayne, the producer for our new audience in Washington State, has been, he's got a calendar in the studio where he's marking off the days so he can watch Meghan and Harry. And she said, yes, she was recording it. And I said, why? What can you possibly learn from this? Mary in Georgia, did you watch it, Mary?
I did see part of it, but
And
basically the same reason you saw part of it.
I didn't see any of it. I'm playing clips. Why did you watch it? Why did you turn it on?
I didn't turn it on. My mother controls the remote control.
Okay.
And she went to sleep holding it. I didn't bother it till she went to bed, and then I turned it off.
Oh, you were going to wake up your mother. That's your excuse.
Exactly. I thought it was the most claptrap I've ever seen.
Oh, Mary, that is truly a dodge. That's a dodge. That's
no, you don't know my mother.
Okay, that one goes into the books. I couldn't get the remote control out of my mother's sleeping hands. Thank you, Mary. 1-800-520-1234. Here is another slab of Meghan. Cut number 4 on being taught on how to curtsy. Cut number 4.
So it feels to me like things started to change.
Anymore. I can't do anymore. Did you catch a couple of clues in there? A day plan for the world. All right, so we are clearly establishing a brand. A day plan. Her wedding was a day plan for the world. And did Diana ever do an interview? So we're clearly trying to Diana-ize Meghan Markle here. And then the penny dropped. It's so absolutely, positively contrived. It's the most contrived thing ever. And, you know, they're the king and queen of woke. They're climate change warriors. I get it. But really, why did you watch? Doug in Colorado Springs. Did you watch this, Doug?
Hey, Hugh. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I kind of fell into it by accident. My wife was watching it, and then I said, oh, let me go see if my theory was correct, and I was right. He left because of the press. I just wanted to see if that was true, and it was. I think the way I took him, he was seething at the press. He was sick of it, and he said, I'm out of here. And that's the only reason I watched. All the other stuff was just typical Oprah stuff, and I just wanted to see it. And it was there. It was like boiling underneath him, you know.
So you watched the whole thing, Doug?
Yeah. He was angry. I mean, they killed his mother, and he was going to get away from them.
Oh, interesting. Did he say that?
No, it's just,
okay.
You could just see it.
Okay, so you're inferring that. Okay, got it. Robert in Grand Junction, another Colorado male. I guess the men of Colorado like Meghan and Harry.
Oh, they certainly do. Good morning, Mr. Hewitt. I found it fascinating throughout. I found great insight into Prince Charles. I don't think he should be king after that interview last night. And I love.
Well, we're Americans. We don't have much say in that. But why? I mean, what did you expect to learn?
Oh, well, one thing I learned was the protection. They weren't going to give them protection. Can you believe that? I mean, geez, they're the part of the royal family, and they're going to withdraw their protection. Archie, Meghan, and Harry's protection.
So you are sympathetic to them. You're very sympathetic.
You betcha. Leave those kids alone, Hugh.
Well, I'm not. Look, you go on Oprah, you're not exactly asking to be not talked about. Right?
Well, that's true, Mr.
All right. I'm just saying, people who say, if you go on Oprah, you're not hiding from the world. And God bless them, and God love Archie, and I'm glad she's going to have a little girl. But let's be clear. This is about money, people. This is about establishing a brand and being the new Diane. It's about money. ReliefFactor.com, there you have it. This is about money. They're sponsors, but it's actually about making sure you feel better every day. I take Relief Factor in the first hour of the show every day. I remind you about it in hour 2 and 3. Do not leave home without it. Put a bag in your car. And make sure that you give yourself a chance every day to feel the best that you can feel. That's why I take Relief Factor every day. Because I want to feel the best that I can feel, no matter how old, no matter how much workout I'm doing, no matter how much exercise, no matter what's ahead, no matter how long the commute. ReliefFactor.com makes it easier. 1-800-520-1234. More of you coming up on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Peter, is there a crisis on the border?
No, there isn't a crisis. There are 5 crises. There's a humanitarian crisis, public health crisis, economic crisis, national security crisis, and a law enforcement crisis. And when I say an economic crisis, what by that I mean we're having an influx of illegal immigrants that's going to harm the job prospects of millions of people who are currently unemployed because of the pandemic in addition to other things, and they're going to be competing with those folks. As far as national security is concerned, whenever you don't enforce the border, you don't know who's coming across, and ICE has said, and Department of Homeland Security has said a number of times that they've found all manner of folk coming across the border, Iranians, Chinese, and others, and we don't have a handle on that right now. It's a law enforcement crisis because all the data shows that with respect to serious crimes, murders, rapes, robberies, illegal aliens generally have higher crime rates than do Native Americans. As far as public health is concerned, it's self-evident. We have to have proof that we are COVID-free when we enter the United States, okay, lawfully, on a plane or through the traditional entry process. But thousands of illegal immigrants are coming across. We don't even know who's coming across, but we're waving them across without any COVID tests. They could be transmitting COVID or other diseases. We don't have a handle on that. They have pretty much declared that they can come across. There's an amnesty. They'll get free health care. This entices a lot of people to make an arduous journey, be exploited by the cartels, by coyotes. This is reprehensible what's happening. There's one objective here. We all know what the objective is. The principal immediate objective is turn Texas blue.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
A family was thrown off the plane by Frontier. They
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. My happy music. It's also on my running playlist. KGMI people, I hope you are enjoying this. 1-800-520-1234. One thing I do a lot on the show, 3 or 4 times a year, I'll get a cause that wants to sponsor a drive, and I'll prove it. And Food for the Poor is always one of those sponsors. And in fact, the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I wrote the largest check we ever had to Food for the Poor this year. And I don't tell you how much left-hand, right-hand stuff, basic Christianity, but I'll tell you this, significant, because the COVID impact on Central America has been a disaster. Fragile economies, dependent on tourism, crushed by the closure of the world. And then massive storms hit Honduras, for example, where Food for the Poor delivers life-saving rice and beans and has for many, many years. In fact, here's a TV report from Honduras.
This yellow boat is from the Food for the Poor fishing villages. They were sent to help rescue people from their rooftops. The president and CEO, Ed Raines, says they will continue to provide for those in need and need your help.
So we've sent containers out already that have everything you might need to respond in these type of situations. And we're going to continue to send things out.
A special donation page has been created for anyone who wants to help.
That's Food for the Poor. They broke off from getting food to starving children to go out and rescue people from roofs. That's what Food for the Poor does. One of the greatest relief organizations in the world. And that's why if you go to hughhewitt.com, there's a banner at the top asking you to give now for the efforts in Central America where COVID and the weather has devastated an already fragile economy. Please dig deep. $111 supports 3 children for 6 months. But I'm not, I'll take 10, I'll take 50, I'll take 100. I'll take 10,000, whatever you want to give. Food for the Poor has a very low overhead. They do deliver the food, the rice and the beans. They keep people alive, and if necessary, they'll get in the boats and they'll go get them off the rooftops. I am asking my callers if they watched the King and Queen of Woke last night. Kathy in Oregon, Welcome, Kathy. What'd you think? Did you watch?
Absolutely, and I did it on purpose.
And why?
Because I've heard all of the rumors, just like everybody else on the media, in the media, and I just wondered what they were going to say. I was just extremely curious, and they didn't disappoint. They said pretty much exactly what I thought. I'm suspect of anybody at all that doesn't take a little responsibility for conflict. If you can't be self-deprecating, then, and make yourself out to be the saint in every single quarrel, then I'm suspicious. Nobody's perfect.
Oh, so you're watching it as a morality play. You're watching it as a passion play to see if there's any self-awareness on the part of Meghan and Harry.
I guess you could say that.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Now, look, Harry's a warrior. I'm a civilian, so I have great respect for his military service, and he flew into the face of danger, etc. I have zero interest in Harry and Meghan outside of saluting him for his military service. Zero. None.
Well,
Nada.
I have the same feeling about football, so.
Well, you're wrong, but God bless you,
I'm
Kathy.
I'm
that's
a
good.
Girl.
You're partially redeemable. Thank you. Let me go to Cheryl in Chicago. Good morning, Cheryl. What do you think?
Good morning. I turned on for about 5 minutes, and then I decided I didn't want to hear anymore. May God bless their marriage, but something here is awfully, terribly wrong. The need for them to air everything about their family, their monarchy among the world. If there was something that terrible, then they should have gone to their family and dealt with it. But I just feel this made me have a greater appreciation of Jackie Kennedy. She was very private, very loving in how she dealt with things behind the scenes. And so I just say something is wrong.
All right, well, God bless their family and their new baby and Archie. I agree with you on that. Thank you, Cheryl. Lori in Alabama. What say you, Lori? Lori in Alabama, you're on. Has she gone away? Hello, Lori. I hate it when people are. I'll bet you're on mute, Lori. That's the only. Oh, there you are. What do you think?
Well, somehow my face muted my phone.
Yeah, that happens to me too. Actually, that happens to me a lot. So when we have those mute, so I understand completely. So what did you think?
I did not watch it, and the reason being is we fought a war to get away from those people. I do not understand American fascination with the world. I mean, honestly, it just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Oh, that's funny.
And I also think that Meghan was a B actress, and based on the clips that you're playing, she still is.
Lori, thank you. We fought a war to get away from those people. I love those people. I have great I'm an Anglophile. I am. I just don't like the soap opera parts of it. Let me see the Evening Review and the Victoria and Albert Museum, and let's go to the Palms. But honest to goodness, I don't need the soap opera stuff. This was season 11 of The Crown. More coming up, America. Stay tuned. The news and much more ahead in hour 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Born to Lead and Salem Now.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
A family was thrown off the plane by Frontier. The family claims it was because they wanted an 18-month-old masked. The Frontier claims it's because after multiple requests, the family would not wear masks. This is the New York Times, New York Post, and many other places. Every other passenger that I read about doesn't mean every other passenger, but every other passenger that I read about said that they were masked the entire time. They were part of a Hasidic Jewish group, and all of them are seen wearing masks in the videos taken on the plane by people's smartphones. I think Frontier is an independent airline. And according to some, a reference was made to, we really got the Jews or something like that amongst the people there. They some of the crew actually clapped when they left. It's a troubling story if unless Frontier is telling the complete truth. Frontier looks ugly in this story.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of studies, one of them was led by the black Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who made the argument that unskilled illegal aliens pose competition to unskilled black and brown workers. And Coretta Scott King once wrote a letter, I believe it was you who brought my attention to that. I wrote a letter to Congress urging them not to relax sanctions against employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens because of the threat that they pose to black and brown workers. That was Coretta Scott King writing that letter.
And there are a number of others, Barbara Jordan and others, of course, but this was at a time when many of our black leaders actually had true, adult, sane concerns about the prospects of African Americans. These days, I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone, but if you take a look at our so-called black leaders, they're all in uniform lockstep with the principal interests of the Democratic Party as opposed to the average American and average black American. We've had hearing after hearing at the Civil Rights Commission. There have been numerous hearings before Congress on this. The evidence is plain. Yes, you're going to get contrary arguments from people. I would urge your listeners, take a look at the data. One of the pieces of evidence before the Civil Rights Commission is that 40% of the 18-point decline in labor rates among blacks prior to the Trump administration came from competition from illegal immigrants. That's astonishing. That was turned around under Trump. We actually had a complete reversal. We had the lowest unemployment rates among blacks in history, and especially among young blacks. And labor participation rates for young blacks was going through the roof. And now, just because Trump implemented this, we're reversing this, and we're damaging the prospects in a time when we can't afford it in the midst of a pandemic.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He's Andrew Cuomo. He's like a mafia don. He doesn't go out of anywhere unless it's in a box. Tell us, what's the truth, Joe Piscopo?
You know, Seb, he is. He's the Terminator of politics. And he really is. He'll be back. I'll be back. You know, and then I love everybody's making the mafia references because he's Italian. I don't get offended by it, but he's like the Salazzo character. Remember?
Yes, Virgil Salazzo.
I don't like violence, Michael. It's bad for business, you know? I mean, and then or how about this line? You want to see Governor Cuomo say that the bad news for me and bad news for you. You know, it's like a character. However, let me put this caveat out there, if I may, my friend. When I knew Andrew 30 years ago, 20 years ago, he was always nice. He was always cordial. He was always a gentleman. That's the Andrew Cuomo I know. I don't know who this guy is now, you know? And
really?
Michael Goodwin. Yeah, honestly. And
so you're saying he's changed?
I don't look. I talked to Kieran Lawler, who's up in Albany, one of the assemblymen, and Kieran said, "Joe, why are you saying nice things about Andrew Cuomo?" I said, "I'm just saying when I met him, he was nice." Then I talked to Michael Goodwin this morning, that we know and love from the New York Post, and Michael says he has changed in office. I do know this about him. First of all, he was always nice to me, and I always open the mic up to join me on the air. But I'm not Seb Gorka. I like to think I'm a good radio guy, but I'm not. He said to me, he goes, "Joe, I love you, but you're no Dr. Gorka." He told me that. No, not really, but the thing is, what he did was with the women was one thing, and he apologized, and we have to accept that. I think easy for me to say, but it was nice that he did that. Not what you know what this means. The Italians go like this. You and the Italians go like this. They not one question from any reporter about the nursing home deaths. Right. Did you notice that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Andrew Cuomo was rewarded every single step of the way by mass media, by Hollywood, for his handling of the Chinese coronavirus. And here's a question that we brought up earlier. I don't know if we actually ordered his book or not. How did he get away with writing a book in the midst of a scandal? In the midst of a crisis? Could you imagine if Donald Trump published a book in the midst of the Chinese coronavirus?
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt. Great to have you on the program with me on this Monday. I want to welcome especially KGMI News Talk 790, our new affiliate in Bellingham, Washington. Great to have you. No one can replace Rush. I am, however, happy to try and fill that void. All the news you need, the analysis you want every single morning. Breaking news always comes first. Joined now by Michael Shear, New York Times White House correspondent. You can follow him on Twitter at Shear, S-H-E-A-R. S-H-E-A-R-M on Twitter. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Hugh?
Great. I got 4 topics for you. First of all, did you watch any or all of the interview between Oprah, Meghan, and Harry last night?
I did not.
Yay! Yay! Hooray!
I've seen a couple of the headlines this morning. But I had other stuff to do, so I did.
God bless you, Michael Shear. Someone has restored my faith. My producer watched every minute of it. Men are calling me from all over the mountains of Colorado saying they're weeping softly, and I'm just saying, oh, season 11 of The Crown. Okay, number 2. The biggest story in the bill, the tax bill, is to me the treatment of kids. And I'm actually in favor of this. It's basically Nixon's negative income tax for kids. Updated, and $3,600 a year per child is a lot, and it's most of the kids in America. Have we paid enough attention? This is actually revolutionary and radical, maybe the biggest benefit in history passed for children.
Yeah, so I mean, if the question is, have we paid enough attention to kind of the details of this, I think I've been struck by how little kind of the whole political establishment in Washington has delved into the details of this bill. I mean, $1.9 trillion. I mean, it's hard to even get the words to come out of your mouth. A lot of attention focused for many, many days on the debate over the minimum wage. A lot of attention focused, I think, by the Republicans, especially on the $350 billion, I think it is, for the state and local. And in some ways, that's what politics and journalism does, right? It focuses on the stuff that is highly controversial, and it ignores the stuff that there's some general consensus about. But it is striking, and it is going to have long-lasting implications, not just during the pandemic.
Now, parents are going to start to receive $300 a month per child under 17. Most Americans. Some Americans won't if they're making, I think, over $150,000 as a couple or $80,000 an individual. It might begin to taper down. But let's take the vast majority of Americans. I don't think that has been coupled at all with any financial education. If you take that $300 a month, and to the extent that you can, you put it into a 529 account, you will have paid for college if you do that, or even half of it, or even a tenth of it. Have you seen any financial education coupled with this money?
No, but keep in mind, I mean, and I'm not sure that would be a bad idea. I think that sounds smart if you could help Americans, be better stewards of their money. But keep in mind also that some of what we're trying to do here is a stimulus program, right? That's what the lawmakers tell us they want to do, and stimulus, trying to stimulate the economy requires that a good chunk of that money not get stuck into a 529 plan for the next 20 years, right? That doesn't stimulate the economy in the short term. So what you hope, I guess, if at least this is the argument that the politicians make, is that some big chunk of that money just goes back into the economy. People spend it on food and on clothing and on rent and on all sorts of stuff. That doesn't mean you don't want some of that to be saved. And from an individual perspective, it might be better, if somebody can stick some of that money aside and save it. But the public policy benefit is a little bit less if that's what happens.
No, it's about $100 billion of the $1.9 billion, and so it's not going to hurt the stimulative effect overall. I don't know where the 350 is going for state and local, because it's not apparently going into pensions. It's very poorly understand what the $1.9 billion is, but that $100 billion could be saved. Let me ask you now about the potential lie, and this goes to Joe Manchin beginning to dance around on the filibuster. Only 2 weeks ago, he said, and I'm not going to quote him because it's a family show. He said, JC, what part of never don't you understand? And in December, he was saying he was never going to change the filibuster. Right. Has he begun what will be a lie, Michael Shear, if he changes, if he even adopts an amendment? He promised the voters of Georgia he wouldn't do it. He made an impact on the Georgia Senate race. If he changes, that will be a lie. Is he getting ready to change, do you think?
I mean, it sure seems like he's under a lot of pressure and is cracking a little bit. I mean, as I understand it, he repeated his pledge not to vote to eliminate the filibuster, but he has indicated some willingness to make modifications to it in ways that would make it more difficult for a filibuster to kind of just routinely happen. He wants to, at least is considering the possibility of forcing senators to actually keep talking, physically talking, as opposed to just, sort of raising their hand and saying, okay, now I filibuster. It would be a big change. It would be a huge change. And I do think that there would be people who would look at Joe Manchin and say that doesn't meet the, that is a lie. That is a broken promise.
It is, all the fact checkers of the world. I think it's a corrupt business anyway, but they would have to call it a lie. I just pushed out the Yahoo News story. Never, he shouted at a journalist who asked if setbacks to the Democratic agenda might lead him to reconsider. JC, what don't you understand about never Manchin on filibuster changes? I mean, if he changes, it's a lie. And I don't think he's a liar, but I also think the media, because it's left-leaning, will cover for him. Michael. I think that's what they'll do. They'll cover for him.
Maybe. I mean, look, I don't speak for the entire media. I do think that, the more a politician makes statements like the ones you just read out, the more vulnerable they are to being called out on it, and whether the media uses the L word or whether they simply say, this is a broken promise, or they sort of do something less straightforward. I mean, I think there will be a range of coverage if that's what he does. But like you, I think it's hard to see how that isn't a broken, how that doesn't go completely against the very clear statements that you raised, that you read just now. If he does that.
All right, Michael, the last thing I want to do, you made a tweet on February 22nd, which happens to be my birthday, which is why I noted it, and I wanted to read it to you. It's over. After 4 years of Trump, Katie Rogers, your colleague at the New York Times, hails the return of Washington Weekend with this fantastic lead. Quote, Washington, President Biden did not do anything this weekend. Well, let's rephrase. President Biden did not do anything alarming this weekend. Close quote.
Okay.
What does that tweet say about Katie and about you and about the Times? Does it have a political agenda built into it, even if you weren't aware of it when you wrote it?
I think it's a fair question. I mean, I think the fairness of that question is the word alarming, right? I mean,
yes.
It indicates a judgment, I guess, about us claiming that things that Donald Trump did were alarming and things that Joe Biden has done are not. I guess
exactly.
And that's a fair critique. I guess what I would say is that I think if you look back, and I think this was the point of the story, and I think the point of my retweet of the story is that if you look back at Donald Trump's presidency and you take partisanship out of it, that there were many, many times on weekends, and I can attest to this because my wife will tell me my weekends were lost over these kinds of things, many times that Donald Trump did things that weren't alarming to Democrats. It wasn't a partisan alarming thing, but that alarmed Republicans. I mean, how many times were Paul Ryan and when he was Speaker of the House alarmed by, things that Donald Trump tweeted? How many times were conservatives alarmed by, some action that Donald Trump took that seemed out of left field or was, or sort of got everybody in Washington spun up? So I guess what I would say, and this is not entirely satisfying to you, I'm sure, is that I wasn't necessarily, tweeting it because it's a Democratic versus Republican thing. It was more of a way in which Donald Trump sort of seized,
Michael, the word would have been newsworthy, and I would have had no objection.
Yeah,
but the word alarming is pejorative, and set up. Yeah, it's just an interesting thing because I think you're fair, but someone who read that tweet would say, "Oh, there's the New York Times again, alarming versus newsworthy." Oh well, Michael, it's always great to speak with you. I'm so glad you didn't watch last night. God bless you. Follow him at Shear M on Twitter. Follow me to the next segment on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another $1 trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I have a list of 32 questions that you should ask any relative or friend, and send the list to any relative or friend, to find out if that relative or friend is a liberal or a leftist. It's powerful stuff. I'm going to read to you the questions. I actually read it last night. I read it when it's published, because when you see your work published, it looks different, as it were. And here, I'm going to call it up from, well, I would if my computer worked. It renders that difficult. That's too bad. All right, I'll get it up somehow. There are 32 questions, and I worked very hard in phrasing it in such a way as to make it completely clear so that the reader does not have to ask, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? And then we can work on it. And, well, you know what the magic is, my friends, when you can't do something on your computer. What you do is turn it off, reboot it. Your Windows, if it's Windows, your Windows system wants to be renewed. It is a spiritual act on the part of your computer.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden announcing yesterday, here's what he said about enough vaccines for every adult in America in a matter of weeks.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
Now, while that's good news, he can't help himself in taking pot shots at the previous administration that has delivered the vaccines to the world. They laughed.
"22 minutes after the hour, America." This is a great running song. Giving you my playlist from Saturday. First half marathon I've run since turning 65. I'm feeling good about myself this morning. Brag, brag, brag. Hey, I want to tell you that a new edition of The Interview with Hugh Hewitt is up. Michael Walsh, author of Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost, is the new interview. It's posted over at The Interview with Hugh Hewitt. You can find everything at interviewwithhugh.com. Interviewwithhugh.com. It puts all my podcasts in one place, and that makes it easy. The Salem Radio Podcast Network, actually it's called the Salem Podcast Network.com, has got all the hosts, but I put my stuff at interviewwithhugh.com. All my podcasts are at interviewwithhugh.com, and I encourage you to go there. Financial Story of the Day is brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. To my friends in Bellingham, if you're about to buy a house, if you're about to refinance a house, because I understand from my friends Monica and Steve that houses are going up in value up in Bellingham as Californians flee California and they settle in Washington State. Within sight of the ocean in beautiful Bellingham, you want to go to andrewandtodd.com. Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian have been with Sierra Pacific Mortgage forever, 888-888-1172. If you want to get pre-qualified to buy a house, or if you want to get the best rate on a refi, or if you are older and you want to help your son or daughter, grandson or granddaughter buy a house when interest rates are low, and they are low. The 10-year Treasury this morning is at 1.55%. It is up 250% in 6 months, but not your 30-year fixed interest rates. They're still the lowest historically. They're not as low as they were 3 months ago. I can't get back the inflection point. I warned you that those rates were simply not going to hang around. They were the unbelievable rates. But Andrew and Todd still have the best rates ever, and they're still a lot better than anything you'll get 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago. But you've got to go to andrewandtodd.com if you want to take advantage of it, or call them at 888-888-1172. They're actually lenders, longtime sponsors of the show. You'll hear about them every day. Business story of the day comes from CNBC. Investors haven't fully grasped inflation is dead ahead, economist Mark Zandi warns. Now, I tell you about this every day. I tell you about this every single day, that inflationary pressures will develop very quickly, he said. He's the chief economist for Moody's Analytics. And it's going to, when it takes off, and Democrats bring inflation, I'm afraid this will replay the Carter years. Joe Biden is so like Jimmy Carter. He's going to be a appeaser like Jimmy Carter. He's already screwed up Saudi Arabia. We have attacks on the oil fields. He's made peace with the Houthis, and the Houthis didn't want to make peace with the Saudis. He's antagonized our allies. He's making nice with our enemies. He is a complete and utter appeaser. And so you just got to be aware of that. But he's also just spent $1.9 trillion. I mean, the bill will pass on Tuesday. And then inflation is coming. So get your home loan now or forever hold your peace. AndrewandTodd.com will always be there to help you. People will always find it necessary to make changes that they don't anticipate in their financing. But that's the big economic story of the day. 1-800-520-1234. Mollie Hemingway is coming up after the break. If you watched Meghan and Harry last night, I'd like to know why you watched the King and Queen of Woke. There's so much news. The stimulus bill is a policy revolution in aid for children. According to the New York Times, the Times is right. The U.S. proposed interim power sharing with the Taliban. Bad move. Bad move. Biden is ordering voter registration efforts across the federal government because H.R. 1's not going to pass. H.R. 1 is a complete federal, it's unconstitutional in my view. The states control their elections, not the federal government. Joe Biden is going to hold a summit with the Quad. That's a good thing, but he's not starting it. Pope is leaving Iraq as we speak. He's had a magnificent visit there. That was great. The Russians are trying to undermine confidence in the Pfizer vaccine. Don't let them. Go and get a vaccine today. Go and get the best. Any vaccine that you can get in America is a good vaccine. Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. Go get vaccinated. We're up to almost 100 million vaccines delivered. Thank you, Operation Warp Speed and Donald Trump. I'll be right back, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another $1 trillion was agreed to. And now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Well, my question is, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about systemic racism, and I mentioned one of your nuggets that actually more white people, unarmed white people, are killed than black people. And you say, of course they are, because there's more white people in this country than black people. So what's the answer to that? I didn't know how to come back on that.
Real simple. White people are what percentage of the population? Around 61%. What percentage of the homicides are committed by white people? 50%, meaning they commit, as a percentage of their population, less murders than blacks do at 13%. We commit almost half of the homicides at 13%. So at 13%, we're far, far more likely to be an offender and a victim of a homicide. A young black man is anywhere from 7 to 10 times more likely, Larry, to be the victim of a homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black man. The leading cause of death for young white men, Larry, is accidents, like car accidents or pool drownings. The leading cause of death, preventable or non-preventable for young black men, homicide, almost always at the hands of another black man. That is why the police are there. It is true that the police are 2.5 times more likely to kill a black suspect. It's also true, as I said, that a young black suspect is 7 or 8 times more likely to be a victim of a homicide. That's why the cops are there. You look at a city, Larry, like St. Louis. St. Louis is about 45% black. About 300 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Baltimore, 65% black. About 400 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Chicago, a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides black on black. Tell your friend that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We find out 2 weeks ago from his assistant on that call to Democrat lawmakers, oh yeah, we hid the evidence from the feds. Joe, if you hid the evidence from the feds of a crime, if I did, guess what? The feds are on our door at 6 a.m. with AR-15s. Is this man made of Teflon? Is he the new Teflon Don?
No, I got to tell you, honestly, and you know, it's so tough for me now. So I talk to you as a Salem brother. You know, I try to stick up for the Italians, and I'm getting killed there. We got Fauci, we got Pelosi, we got De Blasio, we got Cuomo. I'm getting killed over here, my friend. I'm just telling you. It's like,
it's got to be tough.
It's tough now. And I want to say something nice about Dr. Fauci. Boom, they'll call up. Everybody calls them, tell me what's up. And with Andrew, though, he is a political animal along the lines, the old world political animal, and I mean that he's very savvy. He's Nancy Pelosi, he's Chuck Schumer. You may not like these people. They are vicious when it comes to politics. You know that. So I don't think you ever count them out. I think, I'm telling you what, even with all those nursing home deaths, and our hearts go out to every family. Janice Dean, can you get more of a sweet person than Janice Dean? How great is she? And what she had to go through, that alone, I think Andrew owes an apology for that as well. I'm amazed that they didn't.
That's the point. Where's his apology to the families, to the loved ones, like Janice Dean, who lost her parents-in-law to the COVID virus because of this governor?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You see, the story of the nursing homes is actually a very complicated story. The nursing home story is one that we warned about on this program, and the great one Mark Levin warned about back in March. I remember listening to the Mark Levin radio program, and a woman called into the Great One's radio show and said, Mark, I work for a nursing home association, and Andrew Cuomo is now ordering Chinese coronavirus infected patients to be put into nursing homes. And at the
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. What are we giving to the children of America under the new stimulus bill? $300 a month. 69 million children are going to have their parent or guardian receive $300 checks a month under the new bill. That's more than 93% of American children. Good or bad idea? Molly Hemingway joins me from the Federalist and Fox News. Good morning, Molly. How are you?
Great. It's good to be here with you.
I am great to have you. I am going to get to that in just a second. I first have to ask, did you, Mollie Hemmingway, or did you not watch Meghan and Harry last night?
I did not watch the
so
interview.
good.
I saw the commentary on it. I hold grudges for a very long period of time, so I'm holding like a 250-year grudge about British royalty that I am unable to break. But
Season 11 of The Crown debuted last night, and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I were out to dinner, and she confessed she had it on record, and the waitress said she was going to watch it with her mom. And I don't conceive of anything of value that could be gained from watching the King and Queen of Woke. Do you? But ask around the Federalist. I'll bet you'll find a bunch of royalists in hiding around the office.
Well, I find it just interesting how people are so interested in them. And I think part of it is a good thing, which is in America, we used to be a place where it was inconceivable that you would have this class of people that were set above and apart the rest of the people. And we used to sort of believe every man a king here. And so that curiosity and fascination made a bit more sense than where we are now, where we do seem to have more of an elite structure that is separate from the people. But also, I think it really is an interesting dispute between two different values: the celebrity culture that embraces, victimhood and self-expression versus royalty, who are supposed to have a very strong sense of duty and restraint. And Meghan Markle is clearly on one side of that. And so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
She's also clearly on the side of establishing herself as Diana 2.0 and a brand that can be monetized. And I just viewed it all as a money-making exercise, and I'm very cynical about it. But I have great admiration for the Queen because she's been around since World War II. Talk about durability and doing your job. She shows up every day for work for, 60 years?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a hypocrite on my anti-royal stance in that I genuinely like the Queen. I'm concerned about her husband right now and his health, and I feel bad for her that she has such a mess of a family. But it's another country's problem, though.
It's another country's problem, and you and I didn't watch, but I can't believe many of my listeners did. Now, Molly, let's go to this. It's a revolution in child care policy, and it's unaccompanied by any financial education. I've been pointing out this morning that if that $300 check arrives in your house and you don't need to spend it, put it into a 529 and it will double every 7 years, and your child's college education will be significantly less expensive if you do that. Now, some people are up against the wall, obviously, and they'll have to spend the $300, but it's a huge policy revolution. It's the most pro-family, pro-child policy ever passed by any legislature ever. What do you make of it?
I tend to like policy ideas that encourage or incentivize having children and who understand that having children also has costs associated with it. I agree with you. This wasn't a particularly well thought out, policy proposal. And the real problem that we're going through in our country right now is that we have kept our economy closed by mandate and long beyond even it was arguably necessary. And if you want to help out families and help out kids, the best thing to do would be have them in school, have their parents working. Handing out money is something that's necessary right now because of what the government has done, shutting everything down, but it's not a great long-term strategy.
Well, now let's divide it up. I agree with everything about if this is not relief. This is not pandemic relief. Pandemic relief goes to employers, and pandemic relief goes to the unemployed. Children are suffering as a consequence of this, but the best thing you could do is reopen the schools, and we're not doing that. And so that's a different issue. But if we're going to do something, that which gets rewarded gets repeated. This is the first incentive to have children, I think, that the government has ever passed.
Well, you see it sometimes when you have greater tax relief, like even the Republican passed tax reform bill of a couple years ago had much better tax credits for people with children, where, if you had a large family, you were getting significant money back. But I do think you're seeing, since both Republicans and Democrats are much more interested in these policies, and also just the realization that we have something of a fertility rate crisis, you're seeing much more interest in these types of proposals. There was some analysis done, though, that showed, unfortunately, that these types of programs, when tried in other countries, don't actually have a huge effect on the childbearing rate. There have been a lot of countries that have tried to incentivize people having children because of what happens when they don't, and there haven't been tons of positive effects from these types of government programs. You hope that we might crack the code here, because it is so important for the future health of the republic.
It's also massive. I don't know what the other countries have done, but let's say you have 7 kids. And there aren't a lot of 7-kid families, though I grew up with many 7 kids family in Roman Catholic Warren, Ohio. That's $2,100 a month in money. That's real money. And people can do real things if they plan the right way, Molly. What I most object to is that these checks are going to begin to arrive and people aren't going to figure it out. I mean, they're not going to find it equipped with a wise guide for using, spending, and saving money.
Yeah, they definitely won't get that. And why would the government be able to provide that guide then, since the government itself has no idea how to properly spend or save money? But it is an opportunity, I think, for other people in the community to help people see what can be done, the magic of compound interest, how to properly divvy up, what you save, what you spend, what you give to charity. These are important things for all people to learn, regardless of their income. And there's a great opportunity for people to talk with their neighbors about this, or for churches to provide these types of programs that help people learn how to make it much more powerful than just cashing the check.
Bingo. And you just mentioned something I try and stress to young people all the time. The most important dollars you make are those which you put immediately into your 401k that are matched. It's free money. So now the government is sending you money which you've got to put into your 401k or into a 529 if you don't need it to survive. It's the decision. You can't, if you expand your budget right now with this $300 check and you don't need the $300 check, that's really a missed opportunity. And now it's a 1-year program, Molly. The Democrats intend it to be in there forever. It's the negative income tax that Richard Nixon originally proposed in 1970, and there's no government. This is the best part about it, and I'll get your comment on this. It's a direct check with no intermediary government function. It's from the IRS. We don't get any size of government increase with this, which is another reason I approve of it.
That's very interesting. There's no government agency running this program or taking a cut out of it.
Yep. No AFDC, no means testing, no visits by a social worker, nothing like that. No incentive to leave your spouse. It's just a neutral $300 per kid. If you step back, the economist out there would say this incentivizes having children.
This is and it's great. Like, it took us 60 years to figure this out, that this might be a good way to help people, particularly like the lack of means testing still doesn't mean that it doesn't help people at the lower end more. And this is something that could have been tried 6 decades ago with probably much better effects than what we got out of the welfare state.
100% agree. Last question. I talked about this with Michael Shear, who I think is one of the finest reporters in Washington, so I don't want to slam Michael when he's not here. He retweeted on February 22nd the following. After 4 years of Trump, he didn't retweet, he tweeted. After 4 years of Trump, Katie Rogers hails the return, she's a New York Times reporter, of the Washington weekend with this fantastic lead, quote, Washington, President Biden did not do anything this weekend. Well, let's rephrase. President Biden did not do anything alarming this weekend. And Michael admitted to me that that is a political tweet. It would have been, if they'd used newsworthy, it would have been neutral. But when they said alarming, they branded themselves. Agree or disagree, Molly?
Oh, it's not even a question anymore how corrupt our media are in terms of their full-throated embrace and support of, for instance, Joe Biden, and their histrionic negativity toward literally every single thing that Trump or any member of his administration did. We used to joke that the media took an 8-year nap during the Obama administration. Remember, they claimed there were no scandals. Not covering scandals is not the same as not having scandals. But our media clearly love and support every policy proposal put forth by Joe Biden, no matter how radical, no matter how much of a culture war issue it is, no matter how divisive it is. And so they just don't cover it that way. And they do take weekends off. They are enjoying this time. Their friends and their family members are joining this administration. This is good times for the media. And the Trump administration really was bad times for them. Their friends, their family were out of power. Their way of life was threatened. And it showed in every single thing they wrote, tweeted, said on TV. And now we're getting the happy fun time for the media and other elite establishment figures. But that doesn't.
It is so obvious. It is so obvious. The Manhattan Beltway media elite are left wing, and they make the news, and it's everywhere. It's pervasive. It's permeated everything, and there's no going back. But I also note that viewership is down about 25% across the board for Manhattan Beltway media elite institutions, and readership as well. I don't think there's any changing that, Molly. I think they're doomed.
Last night, someone tweeted out that former President Trump had been asked about Meghan Markle because Meghan Markle didn't like him. And he said something about him not liking her either. And then he said, I got really nothing to say other than I wish Harry the best of luck. And then he looks at the camera and he's like, because he's going to need it. It was just funny. And I was like, oh, we really don't have that anymore, do we?
No,
so
we're not going to. Not with Joe. Not with Joe, no. Molly, good to talk to you. Molly Hemingway can be watched on Fox News All-Stars all the time. And find her at the Federalist working away. Follow her on Twitter at MZ Hemingway, at M-Z Hemingway. And you can do that. Thank you, Molly. Always good to check in with Molly Hemingway. To my friends up there in Bellingham who are listening to their first Hugh Hewitt show on 790, this is what you get. You get the New York Times, you get Molly Hemingway, you get me, you get clips, you get Dwayne. Although Dwayne hasn't, did Dwayne come in today? I had a producer for a day when the show began, and his name is Dwayne, and he occasionally shows up. He does the after show, which you can listen to if you want to subscribe at the Universe, but generally he doesn't come in. So I don't know if he's in today or not. It's if I had a producer, this show would be really something. ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com is what does make the show what it is. 3 times a day I tell you about it. It's a what did Rush used to call it? A obscene profit moment. They are sponsors of the show, but I use it. It's the only supplement I've ever used in 30 years of broadcast work. 30 years I've been doing this. I've declined to endorse any supplement. And the reason is I didn't want to use them. I took my vitamin, I ran, I'm in great shape. I'm in terrific shape, and I intend to stay that way. I do take ReliefFactor.com because Icarian and Curcumin, Resveratrol, Omega are known to help you in many ways, including support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. Stay healthy. Get ReliefFactor.com. Join it today. $19.95 gets you started. Josh Kraushaar joins me next. Hotline Josh. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We find out 2 weeks ago from his assistant on that call to Democrat lawmakers, oh yeah, we hid the evidence from the feds. Joe, if you hid the evidence from the feds of a crime, if I did, guess what? The feds are on our door at 6 a.m. with AR-15s. Is this man made of Teflon? Is he the new Teflon Don?
No, I got to tell you, honestly, and you know, it's so tough for me now. So I talk to you as a Salem brother, you know. I try to stick up for the Italians, and I'm getting killed here. We got Fauci, we got Pelosi, we got de Blasio, we got Cuomo. I'm getting killed over here, my friend. I'm just telling you. It's like,
it's going to be tough.
It's tough now. And I want to say something nice about Dr. Fauci. Boom. They'll call up. Everybody calls them, tell me what's up. And with Andrew, though, he is a political animal along the lines, the old world political animal, and I mean that he's very savvy. He's Nancy Pelosi, he's Chuck Schumer. You may not like these people. They are vicious when it comes to politics. You know that. So I don't think you ever count them out. I think, I'm telling you what, even with all those nursing home deaths, and our hearts go out to every family. Janice Dean.
Yes.
Can you get more of a sweet person than Janice Dean? How great is she? And what she had to go through, that alone, I think Andrew owes an apology for that as well. I'm amazed that they didn't.
That's the point. Where's his apology to the families, to the loved ones, like Janice Dean, who lost her parents-in-law to the COVID virus because of this governor?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You see, the story of the nursing homes is actually a very complicated story. The nursing home story is one that we warned about on this program, and the great one Mark Levin warned about back in March. I remember listening to the Mark Levin radio program, and a woman called into the Great One's radio show and said, "Mark, I work for a nursing home association, and Andrew Cuomo is now ordering Chinese coronavirus infected patients to be put into nursing homes." And at the time, Andrew Cuomo was doing his multi-hour, slow, daily briefings. Mark Levin asked the caller, "This can't possibly be true," and Janice Dean, who works for Fox News, claims that both of her parents were killed as a result of this policy. Let's also get the tape of Janice Dean. So this was a scandal that we knew was occurring. Now, putting Chinese coronavirus infected patients into nursing homes is bad enough. But Andrew Cuomo decided to do something worse than that. He doubled down on the policy, lied about it ever happening, and then covered it up. You see, early on in the virus,
welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. A special thank you to my new listeners in Bellingham, Washington on KGMI News Talk 790 and 96.5 FM. You can't replace Rush. I'm honored to be asked to fill the slot that he had. My guest, and I hope you've learned from listening the first day, that we begin with Jake Sherman on Monday. We end with Josh Kraushaar. They're both center of the road, completely objective, fair journalists inside the Beltway. We also have Mollie Hemmingway and Michael Shear. One is from the New York Times, one is from the Federalist. We got Selena Zito outside the Beltway, and you get me, Hugh Hewitt. Josh, question for you. I've got this new affiliate in Bellingham, KGMI. Have you done any studying yet on how a massive media presence like Rush is being replaced? Or you can't replace them, but the void is being filled, because it is like taking Walter Cronkite off the air in 1971. It is like replacing Tom Brokaw for millions of Americans. Have you been following what the stations are doing?
Not to that granular level, Hugh, but I mean, he is. There are certain folks who aren't replaceable, and I think in the talk radio business, the conservative talk radio business, Rush Limbaugh is sort of the giant above all else. And he came in an era where technology was different, where the market was different, and I imagine a lot of other folks are going to fill that vacuum. It's a lot easier to find a panoply of conservative voices on the radio. When Rush was first starting, he was the guy. He invented the platform, the genre of conservative talk radio. So I don't think he's going to be replaced by one individual. I think a lot of folks in the conservative world are really going to be following in his footsteps.
There are 600 stations out there that have to make a decision, and it's like Walter Cronkite retiring, but 600 different decisions making on what to replace him. Rush built the mall. All of us, the rest of us talkers, just have storefronts in it. And you can't move Sean up. You can move anyone who's on before or during Rush's show down. So there's Prager, and there's Charlie Kirk, and there's me, and there's Mike Gallagher. There are a lot of people that can go into that slot. It'll just be interesting to see how conservatism does without its biggest voice. Now, my next question for you is, did you watch Meghan and Harry last night?
I did. I'm
guilty. No!
I watched that over the NBA All-Star Game, which is, I will watch sports over almost anything else, but I can't watch these All-Star games. And I will say that, like, the interview is, it's not just about the Royals. It sort of is a cultural window in our moment in politics, where how you see, how that interview came across is sort of a Rorschach test of how you view a whole lot of things in our larger culture.
Oh, I agree. I've done mostly that story this morning, even though the child benefit in the new bill, the $300 a month for every child under the age of 17, is the most radical social policy innovation with regards to children in the history of legislation, and no one's paying any attention to it. I mean, it's really, really radical and different, and I like it. But the Meghan and Harry interview is the lead story, so I have to cover the lead story. The question is, what did you hope to learn by watching it, Josh?
Well, look, Meghan Markle, if you follow a lot of the British press in England, there's been credibility issues in the past. So, when she opened up the interview by saying, I didn't even know anything about what it means to be in the royal family, I didn't even Google it, that raised a little bit of eyebrows from this viewer. Playing the race card the way she did. I'd like to hear her name. If you're going to make an allegation that explosive, I'd expect some more details. And
you're referring to, she said there was controversy over the color of Archie's skin. I haven't played that clip because I thought it was so silly.
Right. I mean, look, it's an explosive charge, and if true, like, there should be repercussions. But the fact that she didn't mention any names, and then apparently, she only heard it secondhand through Harry, and
I have. It's not news. It's not. It's absolutely a throwaway. Give me some sympathy, right?
Well, I think that in Britain, that's got to. That's going to be one of the big headlines, if it isn't already. And I imagine then follow up questions are who is the person who made this comment, or what was the nature of the comment. So I think that is going to be a second day story across the pond.
The second header is that she had suicidal thoughts, and I make no light of that. If anyone has suicidal thoughts, they've got to get help, and I talk about it a lot on this show because we have a suicide problem in the United States. However, a lot of people are going to question the credibility of the whole exercise. I think she just wants to be Diana 2.0.
Well, she's an actress, and I thought from like a public relations point of view, it came across she came across very well and made her points very, very effectively. Certainly from my Twitter feed, I think a lot of Americans were fairly sympathetic to her. But I've been following a little bit of the backstory, and I think it's a lot more complicated. I also find it a little bit sad that Harry has cut off contact or most contact with both his father and his brother. Just from a family point of view, I think this kind of cuts across the kind of the liberal conservative line when it comes to family.
It does.
That's another political Rorschach test. If you believe family comes first above all else, you're going to hear and see what happened to Prince Harry, and you're going to be looking at that a little bit skeptically.
Well said. Josh Kraushaar, always a pleasure. Follow him at Hotline Josh on Twitter. Thank you, America, for listening. Special thanks to our friends in Bellingham on 790 and 96.5. I'll be back tomorrow with more affiliates, more news, more headlines, and Dwayne might even come in tomorrow. We'll find out on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.